Hey y'all, it's Jordan from Jordan Budgets. Today we are finally going to talk about my new house. If you do not know, I recently moved from Mississippi to the Midwest. I will be going back to Mississippi for about 6 weeks pretty soon, so you might see me like switch things up a little bit. That's what's going on if you see that. There's a lot happening and a lot of things that will need to get covered in other videos. But in this video, I first want to show you guys my new house. We are living now in a multi-generational housing situation, so we're going to talk about exactly what that means and how I think that's trending. Like, that is the way of the future, and I want you guys to weigh in the comments on what you think, if you think this is going to become a more popular living situation. Also, because why not, at the end of this video we're really going to talk about how I specifically feel like we ended up here, because it has been a journey the last couple of years. I've been on YouTube the last couple of years, and I've had a lot of dreams and goals that have shifted. So we're gonna really talk about why I think this is going to work great for us, why I'm excited about this, and how this personally has become a reality for me. Water. Already need water. If you are new to this channel, we do talk a lot about budgeting. I specifically am a cash budgeter, so I enjoy sharing some of that. We will be sharing a lot of budget-friendly meal preps on this video this year. I'm a single mom of 2 boys. I homeschool out of what I feel is necessity because it has been what has worked best for my kids. So I do have a lot going on this channel. I think it's a pretty interesting life, and we would love to have you as a part of our budget community if you would like to join us. First, the house. I want to share with you guys the house first because I'm very excited. I am living in a multi-generational home, meaning there's more than one generation living here. So my parents will have half of the house, and me and my kids will have the other half of the house. However, this house in particular is set up in such a way that we are each going to have our own floor. The person who built this house had the intention of turning this into an unofficial duplex, I think, and they just never finished it. And it's really laid out in such a perfect way that I'm going to have my own side and my parents are going to have their own side. Though for the first few months of us all living here, it's going to be a construction and sharing situation because we are splitting the house. It's not already split, but when we split it, I will get the portions of the house that I'm showing you guys in some clips. I have my own living room with a fireplace. We have a kitchen. I have 2 bedrooms and an office and 2 bathrooms. It is perfect. It's perfect for me and the kids. And because we are splitting what is officially one house, my portion of the mortgage and bills is only $800 per month. So I am very excited to keep my mortgage and my bills on the lower side. It is a bit of a sacrifice, especially initially, because all the families are going to be living together, but in a lot of ways it's very mutually beneficial for all of us. And that's something I guess we can talk about once we get to really the details of my situation. But you can see this side is a little bit dated, but I really like a maximalist style house anyway. So I think the dated touches are actually gonna work perfect for what I'm wanting. We house hunted for a while, y'all, until we found something that was going to be perfect for us, because basically this house, like I said, is the price of one house because it's not technically a duplex. But my dad is a carpenter. We have electricians in the family. I think we are going to pretty easily be able to turn this into an unofficial duplex so we can all have our own space but still be very close together and able to help one another out when we need to. In addition to the obvious, we are helping one another out with our mortgage and bills. But before we jump into my exact journey, because I don't know that everybody's gonna want to stick around for that, but I do think that the subscribers on my channel might really want to hear the details of how my plans have changed these last couple of years. Because if you asked me 2 years ago, my plan was a mansion with a swimming pool. Like, I was not at all where I am now. I had some big goals that I wouldn't say I'm settling on now, but I've realized I don't really want the financial stress of certain things. Anyway, we're gonna get into that in a second. Let's first talk about what multi-generational housing is. It is, of course, where different generations are living together. So I, for example, am in my 30s and I'm going to be living with my parents, and that by definition makes us a multi-generational housing situation. If you have younger kids, if I was young 20s, I would just still be living with my parents probably, right? I don't know that you would classify that as multi-generational, but we are essentially taking two complete families and putting them together. So I started looking into how common is this, because I do feel like with the rising cost of everything, the rising cost of food and living expenses and rent, I mean, we're all in agreement, right, that everything is dramatically increasing. So I personally feel like everything has doubled the last couple of years and people's incomes are not keeping up with the rising cost of everything. Childcare is exceptionally expensive. Housing is exceptionally expensive. Eating, groceries has gotten more and more expensive. So I was like, surely I'm not the only person to think, hey, this is a really great idea. And I was doing a little bit of research, and it looks like about 17% of the population in the US right now is living in multi-generational housing, be it because they chose it or just out of necessity because they can't afford to do otherwise. I personally think the only negative, and I mean only negative, thing about multi-generational housing is there's still some stigma around it, in my opinion, especially as the, you know, like with older generations. In 1970, it was 4 times less likely to be in a multi-generational home. So I think that our parents' generation, the generation before that, I think it was really like pushed, like you have to be able to fully support yourself. You have to be able to get out and be in your own home. And I should preface that by saying, I think that is primarily an American dream, an American theme. Like, let me know again what you think in the comments. But I have lived for a short period in Costa Rica and Nicaragua, lived in Hawaii. I think it's in all of those places, it was much more culturally appropriate or acceptable for everybody to live together. In fact, it was encouraged for families to be living together. I think it is an American stigma / dream to go out, purchase your own big home that you can't afford, and move away from family, right? Let me know what you think. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Another statistic that I saw was just from 2019 to 2021, 1 million more people in the United States entered multi-generational housing. So we could see a very sharp increase in those statistics as well. I am very curious to hear what you guys think about being able to afford housing, being able to afford food, what you think is a wise decision, what you think about housing in the United States or in your country right now. Okay, let's segue specifically to my life and some turning points and what I think has brought me to this point. Like I said, 2 years ago, I had a dream to buy a, I don't know, 3,000 square foot home so that I could run my business out of it. I wanted a giant pool in the backyard for the boys. I still would love to have a giant pool. Who am I kidding? But it was like, I don't care how much I have to work. I don't care what I have to do. That's what I want, right? And to back up even further from that, setting the scene, 2 years ago, when I had this dream, I was working at a call center. I was renting a very nice 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment for $800. That was an astronomical amount to me at the time. I live in Mississippi. I did live in Mississippi. Now I live in the Midwest. But I lived in Mississippi, so prices were cheaper than other places, but you have to remember that pay in Mississippi is much lower than other places. So $800 was pretty pricey for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in my area. It was a great apartment. Loved it, just very nice. You can go back to the start of this channel and see my apartment and you can just see that it looks great. Like, it looks like a really new, nice apartment. I, at that point, felt I personally could not afford a mortgage in good conscience. I was, again, working at a call center, single mom, 2 boys. I didn't think that it would be an appropriate move to try to get a mortgage because I knew I couldn't really afford the home repairs that might come. Though, at the time, in that area, a acceptable home, not anything fancy, but something livable and nice, was about $600, $700 is what I had family members paying for their mortgage. So it was less than what my rent was, but I just didn't feel I could afford, you know, the AC when it went out in the middle of the heat wave in Mississippi. Like, I wasn't quite there, and I also didn't think I had a consistent Fast forward a few months, I start working for myself on Etsy and YouTube. I'm making great money, much more money than I was making at the call center job. So I started calling around looking into getting a mortgage and purchasing my first home. Well, at that time, the banks all like hard stamp, no, we will never give you any money, at least not until you've had a reliable work history for 2 years. Y'all, that did not ever even occur to me that we would enter a point where they would tell me no, because I was making much more money than I had been making before. But if you go from working for an employer to working for yourself, all the banks will deny you. I called many of them. All of them will deny you until you have a steady 2 years of work history. So I was like, great, awesome. I guess I will keep paying way more rent than what I would be paying a mortgage, right? That's just kind of where I was. I didn't have a choice. So while living at this nice apartment though, my Etsy and YouTube kept growing and growing, which was great, but one of the full bedrooms ended up being just a work office. I had to set my living room up as if it were a studio apartment. My boys had one room, and again, it was only one bathroom, and I'm sharing with 2 little boys, so I really just wanted another bathroom and one more room so I could get my bedroom, so I could have a bedroom. While living in that little apartment though, that is it, I guess would have been the start of 2022. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, because this whole journey has been online, of course, but I think it was the start of 2022. I ended up finding a house for rent. It was, in my opinion, a very dumpy little old house, and it was $1,400 per month for a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. And I say 3-bedroom almost to be nice. One of the rooms, which ended up being the boys' room, was also the room that exited to the backyard, and it had a half bath in it. So it was configured in such a way that we really didn't have much space because their room was cut off by so many doors. Anyway, I really had no choice because this was the height of housing becoming really unaffordable, as well as just non-existent. People were scooping up all rentals. I think it's because people were moving out of some heavily populated areas because they're now working remote, so they're moving all over the place and everybody's shifting around. So where I lived at the time in South Mississippi, housing scooped up immediately, rentals scooped up immediately. You really had a hard time getting anything. So I felt at the time very lucky to get this pretty dumpy old house for $1,400 that just a year ago would have maybe gone for $700. The main benefit to that house too though is it did have a backyard. So my boys love that backyard. We have very fond memories in that house. So this is not like to take away from that, but it was just, you could tell prices were changing, right? It never fails because I am a budgeting channel and I share all of my real numbers. So it never fails that as soon as I start to share real numbers like this, somebody's gonna come in the comments and be like, I wish my rent were $1,400, you know? But again, Mississippi, single mom, paying prices that are double what I'm used to paying and able to afford. After my business expenses are paid, I'm probably taking home like $30,000, right? So take it all with a grain of salt. These are my numbers. That does not mean in any way, shape, or form that it's gonna compare to anybody else's numbers, right? This is just for me to go from paying $800 for a month for a really nice 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment to then having to go like, you know, to the other side of town and I'm paying $1,400 for definitely not of nice as a situation. That is really just to juxtapose what is happening in that town, right? I'm sure you guys can kind of look at your area and say, yes, rent here used to be $2,000, now it's $4,000. I mean, you have to compare region and areas. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, moving away from that soapbox, while living at that house, because this is a really important turn for my mentality and where I was going, right? So when I was living at that house paying $1,400 in rent, which was unheard of for me, and then by the time I paid my bills, it was like $2,100 for that house. I then got myself a car note. It was the first car note I've ever had in my life because I usually just pay for a cheaper car. I get it from somebody secondhand. I would highly recommend continuing down that path, but that is not the path that I chose. I chose a different journey. I said, let me try this out. And We are now a year into me having that car, and I love that it is reliable. I don't really regret the purchase, to be honest with you, but I have definitely noticed what I owe on that car is not moving anywhere. I pay $400 a month, and unless I go above and beyond and pay more than that $400, what I owe them is staying about the same. I've been paying for a year and I'm like $1,000 less on the note, right? So interest, okay? Basically what I'm saying is I had my big girl moment and I realized, oh, interest really sucks, okay? This is not cool. And my car was only $20,000. Again, don't know that I would recommend spending $20,000 on a car, but I thought it was reasonable at the time and a good decision. Getting that car really changed something in me to say I don't want to pay interest on a house, because I had grown up all of my life hearing, purchase a house, get a house, you need to get a house because renting is just throwing money, you know, away to somebody else. And while there is still some truth to that, I gotta say, when you have a $300,000 mortgage that ends up turning into $1 million by the time you've paid it off with the interest, right? That doesn't seem like a great deal to me. It does not seem like I'm saving any money. So that car, the car that I have and love, I do love it, it really opened my eyes to interest and how much I'm willing to throw away to interest. But I gotta say, even after the car, I was still like, okay, like maybe I just need a bigger down payment so I'm not paying as much interest. Of course, interest on houses has changed the last year. That's a whole other thing. But I just felt, okay, it's something I'm gonna need to do. Are we like 20 minutes in? If you guys are still here, leave me a comment down below and let me know that you're still here with me, because I'm always curious. Did they leave me 15 minutes ago? Am I here by myself in an empty room? I don't know. Also, y'all, I meant to film this earlier today and I didn't, so that's why it is not as well lit as it could be. But real life, we made it. We finally got here. So the car really did start to shift my mindset a little bit on how much I despise interest, and what the bank is doing is like not cool to say the least, right? But then I had a really terrible landlord situation. She basically made me live in a house with poop water floors. It was a thing. And so at that point I was like, I am not renting ever again. I'm getting my own house. I don't care how much I hate interest. I'm getting my own house. We are not renting again. Except for we did have to rent again because I had to get out of this really terrible rental. And I did. I got out of that 3-bedroom, 2-bath. She kept my security deposit because I forgot to clean out the microwave, but that again is a story for another time. We ended up at that point moving into our last and final rental. I had determined and decided anyway. And it was a month-to-month rental in a 300 square foot little studio apartment. It was just something that right place, right time. It is very affordable. And we are technically still renting that place for another couple of months while my son finishes soccer and while some construction is happening here on my parents' side of the house. So moving back a step though, that studio apartment is just a month to month, so I knew it could be very temporary. But what ended up happening is because we are in a teeny tiny studio, we spend so much time out of the house visiting friends and family, and it also really shifted something in me. I was like, why are we looking? Because my parents were looking to move to the Midwest when I moved to the Midwest. So I was like, why are we looking for separate houses? My parents are both retirement age and my dad is a bit older than my mom. So my mom is always thinking, what is her long-term plan? Is she gonna rent out, you know, some of her bedrooms to somebody? Or is she gonna like move into a van and go on this grand adventure so that she can afford to live whenever she's retired? But also, like, realistically, what is she gonna do? And while my parents are trying to figure out their retirement plan, where they're gonna move, what house they're gonna move into when we move to the Midwest, I am also here thinking, I want a house that is functional, but I don't want to be paying so much interest. All the houses I was looking at that would be more my bracket on my own were much farther from the city. And if you don't know this, I do have 2 boys with pre-existing conditions. So I'm always planning, like, I need to be able to get to family family, if I have to leave one at home and rush to the hospital with another, I need to be close to hospitals. So I'm trying to figure out all these things in my head before we moved. And at the same time, I'm hanging out with my parents all the time because our studio is little and I want to go hang out with them versus sit alone in a tiny studio. Can you see how all this is coming together? So while we were planning this move to the Midwest, we started really collaborating on, we all wanted our own space, but we were all trying to figure out how we were going to transition to this next phase of life. My parents wanting to know how they're going to continue to pay taxes and pay bills. I'm trying to figure out how to pay a mortgage on a house that is 3 times more expensive than it was 2 years ago. So we started house hunting together and trying to find a house. So we started strategically house hunting. We knew we wanted a house that was technically one house. We didn't want to buy a duplex or something that might be much more expensive because it's a duplex, because it's income, you could make an income off of it. But we wanted a house that we knew we would be able to divide into separate living spaces at some point. So we house hunted for several months. We found the house that we eventually ended up picking. Like I said, my side is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. It has, everything is completely done. It's just a little bit dated. My parents' half has some things that are not done, but the things that are done are a little bit more updated. So they had some buying power that they came in with because they had a house in Mississippi that they bought previous to this whole crazy housing situation. And I am happy to pick up all the things that are coming at us monthly moving forward, like taxes and bills and some things. So we are going to be getting into all of the numbers as time goes on and really get into the nitty-gritty of the money situation. So to sum it all up, I think it is going to be mutually beneficial for all of us financially. It's great because I get to be near family. We're really gonna, at the end of these next few months, we're going to be right next door to one another, but still have some divide between the spaces. But if, like I said earlier, like if I need to go to the hospital with a kid or if one kid needs to be taken somewhere, it really works out for us in a lot of ways socially as well. My parents hang out with my boys all the time. My mom helps me homeschool. So I think multi-generational living is going to be really great for us. I feel in a way it was forced upon us, like it was the hand that makes the most sense. I could have chosen other directions. I do feel like business and Etsy and YouTube and all the things are going in such a way that I could have made the choice to purchase a bigger home and have more space, but it would have just taken up so much of my income. It did not feel like the responsible thing to do, especially when I do value my family time anyway. I would be paying for a giant home and then going to visit my parents in our, in our new town too. They're the only people I know right now. So I probably left out some details there that I was really hoping to cover. Hopefully I got the majority of things though. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. Oh, I already know one of the things that I was going to say, and it's an important part of this story. So one of the really cool things about splitting the mortgage with my parents here and not locking myself into a home to live and work out of is a big priority for me is to get my own land and warehouse. Again, I'm trying to move away from renting. So I do have a small business with the cash budgeting community. I do sell cash budgeting related products, and that business is at such a point that I really think that I could keep expanding and expanding and expanding. However, I need employees to make it what I want it to be. Also, I want to launch my paper planner line this year. So just like I don't want to rent a personal home anymore, I really don't want to rent a warehouse. I would like to get my own land and put a warehouse on it, or already find a piece of property that has some kind of a warehouse set up on it, maybe even a small home, and just run the business out of that land and home and stuff. So because of the way we've set up our living situation here, it is the goal by the end of the year to be able to purchase a work piece of property and and only paying $800 in our mortgage and bills. That should free up a lot of our business money to get that property at the end of the year, get some employees there, really kind of amp up the couple of businesses that I have going or will have going at that point. So that was also a really big factor in making this decision for me versus getting a bigger home and trying to run a business out of that. So that's, I think, all of the points. I think that's it. We will continue to have this conversation, I'm sure, as you guys will see me in this home a lot. And I'm going to be back in Mississippi for 6 weeks, and then there's going to be a lot of construction happening here. So it's gonna be a little chaotic this first few months of the year. But after that, we're gonna have all of this space. You're gonna get to see me transform it on a budget. I have started saving. I am very excited to kind of do some room renovations now that I have a space that is my own. I'm not renting. I would like to go to garage sales. I have a very maximalist style, which is going to be very fun to put in this space. I haven't let myself do that yet because I knew I was going to need to move out of Mississippi for health and hospital needs for my family. But now that I'm in a state where I'm we're here to stay, we have a house, we have all the things, I can finally do all of the shopping and get all the home things that I've been wanting to get. But you guys know me, I'm cheap, I am on a budget. We will do that in a very budget friendly way, and we are gonna be hitting up some yard sales, probably IKEA. There's an IKEA close-ish to me, which has never happened in my life. So I'm excited. If you are excited, if you're excited for me, if you're excited for 2024 in general, please leave this video a like. Please go ahead and subscribe. We would love to have you as a part of our budget fam. As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.